If you've been struggling to hear God's voice, stick around because this one's for you. Part 1. Hey, welcome to Wrestling with Catholicism, a place where we pursue truth, goodness, and beauty by investigating life's questions through the lens of the Catholic faith. I'm your host, Sam Wenzel. You have tens of thousands of thoughts every single day, but where do they come from and how can we find God in the middle of all of that? Our thoughts can be placed into 3 categories based on how we relate to God. The first is indifference, the second is good, and the third is evil. The first category, indifference, basically think about observations. It's not really good or bad, you're just observing the world around you. But the next 2, good and evil, are more or less our judgments, and they cause a movement of the heart. And that movement can either be closer to God or further from God. So let's take a situation, a scenario where we can see all 3 camps of thought sort of at play. So in this situation, you see someone else and they're wearing the exact same outfit as you. So your first thought, your indifferent thought, is basically just observing that, like, oh, they're wearing the same outfit as me. A second thought might be like, you know what, they've got pretty good style. That's a pretty nice outfit, right? That'd be a good thought. The third thought might be, they don't look as good as me. They look like trash compared to me. So we can see in this one situation, all 3 categories of thought were at play basically at the same time. So it's really important that we know how to distinguish between them so that we can act upon the good and grow closer to God and reject the evil thoughts that are trying to take us further from Him. This is where the process called Discernment of Spirits comes in. This was developed and formulated by St. Ignatius of Loyola in the early 1500s. There are 3 main steps to this. The first, be aware, basically just taking note of what your thoughts are. The second, understand, kind of test these thoughts, see where they are. If you kind of picture like the good angel on one shoulder, the bad angel on the other, like what direction are these thoughts trying to move your heart? Closer to God, closer to good, or further from Him? And then the third step is act. The action might be following the good thought or rejecting the bad thought and kind of turning to find where the good in that situation is. And I know that this is really hard to do of every single minute of every single day. I definitely cannot do that. But one thing I do that has really helped me, and I think would really help you too, is something called a nightly examine. So a nightly examine, what that is, every single night before you go to bed, you're going to take 2 or 3 minutes, think about where God was throughout your day, where you cooperated with His grace, that's like where you listened to that voice of good, and where maybe you fell short, where you didn't reject that voice of evil, but you actually listened to it and kind of started going the wrong direction, separating yourself from God. And by doing this, you're able to get yourself right with God before you go to bed, asking for His mercy and the strength to be able to do better the next day. And with this, doing this every single night, if you're consistent with it, you'll start to recognize patterns in your life. And these patterns are going to be the key to moving forward and kind of overcoming some of these vices and replanting those with virtue. St. Ignatius has also written 14 rules for discernment of spirits. These kind of go through different times of consolation when you feel like you're walking with the Lord, when you feel like He's really close, and times of desolation where you feel like God's not close and you wonder where He is. If you want a list of those 14 rules, just message me 14 rules and I will send you a link, or you can just look them up online. But again, those 3 steps of being aware, what are the voices, understanding, where do they come from, and 3, action, following the good, rejecting the evil, is something that we can start practicing in our day-to-day life, and a nightly examine really helps us key in on those moments and patterns throughout our day. If you want to hear more about what this means for our day-to-day, check back because there's going to be a part 2. As always, go be lights and stay salty.